Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our haunted house retrospective with The Changeling, starring George C. Scott. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comic Psycom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoids. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man from Monsterverse Comics, and soon something else. Can I still say that?
You can.
And soon,
we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later.
Yes. If I'm wrong about that, we're live. You can't. It sounded to me like you were saying yes. Whatever.
Shifty. I'm a shifty guy.
And finally, also joining us from Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Our spiritual guidance, Julia Guzman. Julia, what's great about having you on is that you always see the codependence in the character.
Yeah, the addictions and the codependencies.
So, okay.
Not projecting at all.
According to Wikipedia, The Changeling is a 1980, I did not know this, Canadian-American horror film directed by Peter Medak and starring George C. Scott and Trish Vanderveer, Scott's real-life wife. The story is based upon events that writer Russell Hunter said he experienced while he was living in the Henry Treat Rogers Mansion here in lovely Denver, Colorado. All right. And this is a movie I have been wanting to talk about for a long time, and I don't know what the group's reactions to it are going to be. We haven't really gauged it yet. I can't believe I got you all to watch this film. First impressions. Julia, we haven't started with you in a while, so let's go Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll go. Julia, first impressions, The Changeling.
Oh, I thought this was a great, creepy movie. I really liked it. Shocking and horrible. At first I was thinking, oh, good, this is going to be a movie where we don't have to worry about any kids, except for the kid that, dies at the beginning. But then I'm like, now it's just George C. Scott. There's no kids. And then, of course, there's kids. I'm like, damn it. No kids. But it's a really good, creepy movie. I don't understand, and I'll never understand why he needs to live in this ginormous house all by himself. But that's whatever. That is what it is.
Yes.
Rent is cheap.
Great. Yeah, I guess. But I don't want a giant house, no matter how cheap the rent is, because that's a lot of. It's lonely. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, yes, good movie.
All right. Outstanding. Who did I say would go next? Tony, first impressions?
This movie is really creepy. I think it's got a lot of good stuff. There's some wonkiness, but also, again, sound design plays a huge role of awesomeness in it. I really like the movie. I was a little disconnected this time, and I've seen it a bunch of times, so I'm not sure what was different in this viewing, but it's a nice, intense movie. Kind of feels like maybe it should be a novel, but it's not based on a novel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like it. I think it's pretty awesome. It's a good, I think this and The Haunting would make a great double feature.
Oh, I think that's right. So, did you watch it this time on YouTube, or did you watch it on?
I can't remember. I don't own it, which I should. And I looked for it. Yeah, so I can't remember where I found it.
Because it's on YouTube. You can find it there.
Yeah, I'm usually try not to if it's available. Just I try not to.
No, I agree completely. But this is one of those ones that's actually very, very hard to find.
It is a pain. I mean, we're lucky we have stuff in, we can get stuff in Austin, but it is. I was surprised that no one was streaming it on all the streaming places that I think Google Play is streaming it. I have to look again where I found it.
No, that's right. Google Play is, but I don't have any devices that play Google Play, and that's a.
Well, I mean, I have I have a PC that I can hook up to things.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, without Google Play, it would have been real pain. So that's unfortunate because it would be great if
what strikes me as strange is Google owns YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So YouTube, if Google Play is renting the movie, how come YouTube isn't right? Because YouTube also rents movies, And I do have a YouTube app on my various.
Yeah. Well, I'm surprised they haven't. In that case, I'm surprised they haven't shut down the YouTube one.
It just makes no sense. But
yeah.
you know, I don't know. The rights that are attached to some of these older films, especially these that are like not so old that they're like obviously in the public domain, but instead they're just old enough that they're complicated, is that's always tough. Okay, Drew, first impressions, The Changeling.
Well, I didn't. Okay, first off, I thought this movie was great, especially compared to last week. So I'm going to start out by saying this. So any of the following statements are not viewed as criticism. So I'm going to talk about what I liked about it very briefly.
I had no complaints.
For one, this is a haunted house movie where you actually get to see a lot of the house, which I greatly appreciate. A lot of these movies, you kind of only end up seeing one or two rooms.
They're all sets. Everything in the house.
I know they're all sets, but it seemed like for some reason, this seemed like you get the more of a layout of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, George C. Scott is amazing. It's very atmospheric. However, this movie did not scare me at all. It did not creep me out at all. I thought this was more, honestly, outside of the stuff at the beginning of the car accident, which I have to admit I kind of had some post-traumatic stress reactions to, but which was upsetting, but not scary per se. However, to me, this is more of like a mystery movie than an actual horror film. It's more like George C. Scott. George C. Scott never even really seems that freaked out about what's going on in the house. He's more just like, what's going on? Okay, it's a ghost. How do I deal with this? Which I kind of found very refreshing. I liked that you had a protagonist in a quote unquote horror film that was more proactive and was not fumbling around like a dumbass most of the time. This guy was actually on point, and I really dug that.
No, that's wonderful. Okay, and I hope that as we go along, you'll tell us what other things that disconnected for you, because apparently when you dislike a movie, that's enormously popular with our listeners.
I did not dislike this movie. That is not an affair.
We need to watch more movies.
I actually thought this movie was great. I just
we gotta find more movies that for some reason Tony or Jason or Julia adores and Drew hates, or and then that's comedy gold, baby.
Apparently, and I there's plenty of movies I dislike. Most of them are more modern horror films. If we were to watch like the Saw franchise, I would eviscerate it. But this I thought was very elegant and Gothic and wonderful. And I guess I'm calling it an older horror film. It's not really like it came out in my lifetime. It's older. It's not like as old as some of the movies I watch. But I did not dislike this movie. It just didn't scare me. But a lot of the horror films I watch don't actually scare me. So that's not really a criticism per se.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't. Yeah, it's not like a. I don't know. I really thought that some of the other movies we've seen were scarier, but this was super creepy. There are some things, but even the things that are scary are still just creepy. Like I want to skip just to my favorite part, just because why not? I love was that when this ball that his daughter had somehow manages to get away from his closed off desk and go upstairs and bounce down the stairs. And so then he takes it, gets in his car, drives somewhere, throws it off a bridge, comes back, walks in the door, and it bounces right back down the stairs again. I mean, that stuff is great.
It was scary.
It's not like scary, like you're like, oh my God, it's just like, holy crap, that is so freaking, well, here I go with freaking. Whoever it was that was commenting saying that I overused that word, I think. So I tried not to use that.
I wonder what.
Or an alternative. I think it's friggin' was the one last night.
I mean, I would love to see a word cloud of the show to see what people actually overuse. I probably overused the word interesting. I don't know. Let's get right into it, actually. There's some really great things to talk about in this movie. And once again, the story is about this brilliant character who, is a well-known composer, and he rents this giant house in order to sort of start over a new life after after his family dies in a horrible accident. So pervading the whole thing is this idea of loss and grief. And how, just to kick off this conversation about that, I really appreciated how well that was handled. This guy George C. Scott is probably perfectly cast for it, and I want to get in a second to the character of George C. Scott. Maybe this ties together here, and we'll do it here. But you have a character who is however old he is. Joy and I thought that he was like.
I thought he was like 70.
He literally thought he looked great for his 70.
For 70, and it turns out he's like 52, 53,
right.
Something like that.
We thought he looked like a fabulous 72-year-old. He instead is a terrible-looking 52-year-old. But whatever, he looks like it's because of all that he's been through, And
wait, Drew wanted to say something.
Go ahead, Drew.
You talk about how well cast he is. One of the things that, with the grieving aspect of this, because you have a guy like George C. Scott, who is a masculine man. He's not effeminate. He's definitely not. Even though he's a musician, they chose not to portray him as a cliched sort of sort of romanticized, very pretty.
No, he's a very masculine, confident, and professional musician.
And so when you have those scenes of him like breaking down and sobbing, I feel like that hammers it more than if you had somebody that was like on the nose, like, sensitive artist type.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really enjoyable to watch. One thing I think I really like about this movie is that George C. Scott turns in this performance that seems extremely natural and measured. And the way that this character talks about his own personal loss is very real. I completely believed him, because there's a point where he's visiting some university friends, and he's at their house, and he's sitting on their hearth, and he's explaining sort of the process of grief, and then it took him a while to even sort of be able to acknowledge out loud that his family was dead. But there's a robotic, even though he's communicating to people, so he's got it down that that's important, that he has to communicate about what he's going through. His communication of it is still robotic and detached. This is literally the most reserved human I have ever seen in a
That's incredibly realistic to somebody that has post-traumatic stress, though. Like as somebody that's been through an accident, not unlike. Well, not like the one here, but an auto accident in which a family member was lost. Like you talked so much about relating to Ethan Hawke last week. Like I really related to this guy, and I thought his delivery was just spot on.
That's wonderful. That's. I mean, the great thing is, and I'm very sorry as always, but I'm glad that you can bring that insight to this discussion.
Well, it's there, so I want to talk about it.
Right. No, precisely. Well, I mean, I wonder if so the movie posits two things. One, that a person who is going through this kind of grief, and it's horrible. His daughter, his beautiful daughter, and his beautiful wife both die in just sort of a screwy, icy road accident, and now he has moved across the country.
But he's moved again. I mean, like I said before, why does someone in that situation who already feels so alone in the world move into this giant house? You always have, all the other movies you've ever seen, people go, it feels so lonely in this big house all by myself. And here he moves into a much bigger house than anybody has.
Well, I think he's being defiant. First of all, he says he wants a place to rattle around in. Go ahead.
But that's
yeah. Yeah, that was the big thing, is they kind of fix him up with like, hey, this place is like, he has all this stuff. I don't know if he realizes how big it is until he's already kind of made the.
When you're like, grieving though, part of you does want solitude. And when I was, again, I hate to relate too much and make this all about me, but when I was going through very much what this guy was going through, I did live in a very large house, and I just loved rattling around the different. Exactly those words, rattling around the different rooms and just kind of being lost with myself.
Well, addiction literature that's one of the things you do when you're grappling with an overwhelming emotion and with something that really truly has you in its grip is you have a tendency to isolate yourself because you feel like you feel unworthy of seeing other people, and also that other people are unworthy of seeing you. You just literally detach yourself. But what's interesting here is he wants a house that he can rattle around in and work on his music, so there's that isolation thing, but he's doing it in the context of, I'm also putting myself back out in the world. I'm going to go take a job at this kind of beautiful university, supposedly in Seattle. I think it's actually in Canada somewhere. And, so he's opening it up. He's having students over and stuff. But I agree. It is a huge, lonely, so is this a real house at all?
No. They built the facade onto a modern structure, and then all the interiors are set.
So the front of it,
Canada,
not
Vancouver.
real. The inside,
no.
I was completely snowed by this house.
Mm-hmm.
I did believe it.
Yeah, it's done really well. Like the set dressers and everybody. That's a really nice set.
Mm-hmm.
The outside, that's an amazing facade. I hope they didn't.
Well, they spent $200,000 on it.
That's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah.
It looks like, because you pick a big house like you see in The Legend of Hell House. That was a real house. And, the one on Downton Abbey is a real house. There's plenty of giant houses out there that you could use. But, I guess they just had a vision.
They couldn't find anything that they wanted. They probably wanted to be in Vancouver, so they didn't find anything they wanted in Vancouver.
Right. That's pretty cool. The impression, the fictional house that this is just really, truly the size of one of the great houses of Britain. It's not like the big ramshackle house that they bought in the movie we watched a couple of days. The Conjuring. The Conjuring. That's a big house, and it probably has 5 rooms or something. This is not like that. This is like a hotel. It's like something that a lord of a manor would live in. It's something like Bruce Wayne would live in. It's pretty cool. I remember watching this movie and, just being struck. Like as a kid, I've been watching this movie for many years. And one of the things that I was really struck by, getting back to the coolness of George C. Scott, there's a moment when the haunting really starts to become real. And and the haunting, basically the reason the house has picked him is because of that grief that Drew was referring to. That basically, the movie suggests that at least in this movie's world, ghosts are most interested in connecting with people who are on an emotional wavelength with them. Is that new? Have we seen that before?
I think that's a very, Gothic idea. It seems like something that would be at home and like going all the way back to like Edgar Allan Poe or something.
Yeah.
And I think we need to talk about what the meaning of the word changeling is. According to the Wikipedia definition, it's a creature found in European folklore and folk religion. It's typically described as being the offspring of a fairy, troll, elf, or other legendary creature that has been secretly left in the place of a human child.
Yes.
Sometimes the term is also used to refer to a child who was taken. It's the swap child meaning of the term. And so, so that's kind of what the idea is here, is that, this...
And the mysteries leading up to that, you're not quite sure why it's the changeling until you find it out, and you're like, oh, because, like Drew was saying, it's more of a mystery in a lot of ways than it is straight up supernatural, but I think the mystery is really great.
I love detective stories, so that didn't bother me at all.
It actually goes
Gothic detective. Oh, go ahead.
It goes from haunted house story to detective story. It starts out as the haunted house where you just kind of like creepy sounds and what's going on and the ball, and then it becomes there's a ghost. What does it want? How do we get? Okay, Jason's trying to destroy his.
I'm sorry.
We decided to add sound effects to the.
What do you want from me?
Jason's like, what are you talking about? That wasn't me. And they just, it's like it becomes about how are we going to put this ghost to rest. I don't know if you're ready to talk about the story of the ghost. Do we want to go into that?
Well, no, yeah, I think we can do that. That's the other thing that fits into this. Ghost mysteries, in my mind, and by the way, in a moment we'll talk about prestige horror and what I think that is. But ghost mysteries, which this definitely fits into, the whole idea is there is a haunting. Somebody goes into a new situation, be it a shopping mall or a new house or a hotel or whatever it is, and there's a ghost doing funky things, and so they investigate it, and what makes the ghost go away is solving the mystery. Period.
Actually, the ghost doesn't go away. At the end, it looks like the ghost should go away, and then the ghost.
Well, no, I mean generally.
Yeah, in general.
Generally, and okay, but I a little bit disagree with you, and I'll tell you why.
Well, we'll talk about that later, though. We'll talk about the end.
But because, as far as I'm concerned, the haunting's over when they solve the mystery, and that's normally the way it works in ghost mysteries, and it's the way it works here. And there's a lot of times where it'll be like all you got to do is find the ghost's body, and then the ghost will stop. In this case, the ghost wants something else, but usually, basically, it involves this mystery investigation. And in fact, what I love, do you guys love the technology of the actual mystery solving that they use here?
Yeah, I always love a good seance and it's some automatic writing. That's always fun. But what's cool is that then he's recording. Now it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that he would record it and then play it by himself without the medium. I really feel like the medium would have been there for that.
Explain what you're talking about.
Okay, so he invites a medium in to say, hey, what's going on in this house? And so she contacts the spirit, and it's this little boy. And another little thing that annoyed me is I wish they would have used a real little boy's voice instead of a woman. I'm assuming it's a woman's voice. But anyway, they've got so she contacts the little boy through the automatic writing. So she says, what's your name? Who are you? What's your name? Whatever. And she finally gets Joseph is the name and a few other things that she writes. And then she just leaves. And he goes, okay, well now, he says he wants help, but she never asks what kind of help. But anyway, she wants help from John. The ghost says help is what they want. Help, John, help me. So then she leaves. And so now, but he has recorded, John, the main character, has recorded this session with his really great, because he's a musician, so he's got really great recording equipment. And he plays it back, and he can hear, just like in so many ghost stories, which I just think is wonderful, the very soft voice in the background of the thing. So he turns it way up, and he can hear this quote-unquote boy saying, Joseph, my name is Joseph. And then he's like, all the things he's saying. And so that's awesome. I think that if it were a modern movie, there would have been a whole team analyzing that and listening to it. But in this case, it's just him. And I guess that's appropriate because it's all about he's the one that's going to help this kid. He's the one who's got to figure it out. And nobody else is going to. And
he's doing it with this. He's using, in the course of this investigation, he's using reel-to-reel tape. Mm-hmm. He's using footwork with his new girlfriend who just shows up. I love, continue along the thought. Footwork, they're going from place to place, they're interviewing people in person. Unlike the Skype with Sinister, he has to actually go to a local university and talk in person to a human professor somewhere. He has to go to the library and have a human bring him Microfiche, which he has to scroll around on this mechanical wheel.
You guys are probably too young to have ever used Microfiche. Did you ever use Microfiche?
I did.
You
did?
No.
We're older. We're all.
Yeah.
I'm
Drew,
old.
you did?
Briefly. It depends on the place too, because not everybody. I think it was a tail end, but living where I did in Mississippi, I said before, there was still, a lot of the card catalog was still kind of like that at some libraries, and then, the kind of one you slipped under like a piece of glass and moved it around, and then also, when I moved there, we still had a party line, and other places didn't even know what the hell that was. So,
right, we had a party line in college. Yeah,
my hometown wasn't even that high tech. So, no. So no.
I absolutely used Microfiche, and I always pretended that I was Kolchak the Night Stalker. This is in the 80s. And I wanted to be Darren McGavin because he was always looking things up on old Microfiche. Or some person would bring out, he would go to what was called the newspaper morgue, which was where they kept one copy of each newspaper going back as far as the newspaper went. So he would have a slip of paper, he'd ask for an article, and somebody would bring out the newspaper itself and lay it out and look at it. Those kinds of sort of brick and mortar, mud and blood means of research. I love that stuff. I mean, it's really neat to see it, and it's one of the things I liked about The Conjuring is that it places, it's aware of how people work in the old analog world, and this is really in it.
Well, it does make it seem more like a detective story too, where
it totally does.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it's like it. The only thing that makes it not like a Kolchak the Night Stalker kind of story is the fact that he has undergone a personal tragedy that makes him more, that in the conceit of the story, he's more susceptible to the ghost. But if you took that out, if it was just a divorced dad moving across the country to start a new career in Seattle, I think it would basically just play like a Kolchak episode.
Well, also, I mean, there's a lot going on, too, that's kind of interesting, because the ghost, it really picks up around the time he finally kind of is, because he's not really, he's going there to move on with his life, but, you don't get the impression he's there to, meet a new wife or anything, girlfriend or anything like that. When that kind of starts to happen is around the time when things really start to pick up. So he's changing, and it all kind of picks up from there. Also, I love George C. Scott's a great, when he's in his teacher role, he's a really awesome teacher too. It's one of those teachers you would see in Fame or Paper Chase kind of teachers, and he does it really well. It's really
he's
really
funny.
Cool. I like the character
he gets
a lot.
laughs when he's addressing this giant auditorium of students. We see him at one point with a sort of a smaller class, some sort of master class that he's got, literally in his own parlor. He has what must be some really great students.
Yeah, just a little chamber orchestra type of thing.
Yeah,
that he's a little mini.
It's so cool, and it's also cool to see him being skilled. To see that this character is supposed to be really the top of his game as far as being, a master composer and a teacher. You're right. That kind of stuff just gives me just a really positive feeling when I watch this. I love watching these movies that show competent people who are good at what they do, which I know is kind of, I guess it's kind of silly because it closes off a lot of opportunities. But having him be so good means that the only thing that's really wrong with him right now is just the fact that emotionally he's really busted and beginning to heal. But I want to talk about the girlfriend. So he comes to...
You have to put girlfriend in quotes because she's not really
quote
girlfriend.
Well, so let's talk about that. So George C. Scott, again, who at 52 looks fantastic for 70, has come to Seattle, and he immediately develops a just sort of devoted friend from the real estate agent who finds the house for him. And the friend is played by this, I think, really sort of hot, I don't know. What's the phrase? This woman of a certain age, played by Trish Vanderveer, who is a local, I don't know, historian woman who's she's part of the historical society. She rides horses.
She reminds me of Grace from the original Annie, from the Annie that we all know.
Oh yeah, no, that was Anne Reinking, and she has a Anne Reinking thing going along. And it's kind of funny because this actress is Trish Vanderveer, who has a certain sort of, I don't know, a certain snobbiness about her that is charming. It's a snobbiness that is unaware that she is snobby.
She's aristocratic seeming.
Yes, I think that's a really good way to put it. And there's this wonderful, she's been very helpful to him, and there's a point where she comes over to bring he said he's hinted that something's weird, but she hasn't picked up on that. But he's I'd love to get some of the paperwork for the house, and so she comes by with a big portfolio of papers. She goes, I pulled this stuff and I brought it to you, and she's wearing her riding habit because she knows that if one of the best ways to get somebody to do something with you is to present an activity. So she comes over wearing a riding habit so that he can go, oh, were you going riding? It's the neatest, most sweet, innocent little romance among middle-aged people that I really, really enjoyed seeing this.
They don't ever kiss.
No, they don't kiss. Nothing happens. That's what's really.
Well, I mean, that begs the question of whether or not it would be appropriate for a man in his emotional state to really start making
know how long it's been, because he says that he marks that something happened. I can't remember. How does he put it, Jason? That when he talks about that he was like.
He said he finally
assessing.
realized he was able to say they're gone, they're gone, they're gone, and he goes, that was 4 months ago.
So we don't know how long he grieved before he came to the point where he just went, okay, I accept it. Like that's that final stage of grief. I accept that they're gone. He may have been there a year. I mean, we don't really know. So it could be that he's at a good point.
But it's true that he's still. Drew may be right. I mean, she may be very sensitive about not pushing things, which is all of this is kind of funny. She's sort of pursuing him. Let's face it. If she were not placing herself literally right in front of him at every moment in this movie, it's not as though he would be calling her up and saying, I'm bored tonight in my house the size of a shopping center.
No, you'd be at home writing music and crying. And,
right.
I honestly, you talk about, okay, maybe it's a year he's been, he's okay. It's not like they just died.
Right.
Like they were, it was a terrible, this is a guy that has post-traumatic stress disorder. That can go on for years. Some people struggle with it their entire life. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I found it very relatable and very interesting. I wish, honestly, in some ways, it had been more part of the dialogue of the film and this relationship. It is. I'm not saying it's badly written as it is. And honestly, at the point this movie was made, they probably wouldn't have been really ready to address a subject like that. But I did find myself wishing that it would be something that the woman, kind of, but it would have talked to him more about, and I'm sure had been more of that stuff.
I mean, this is where you wish for, honestly, something more like a series, where there could be different steps along the way, where there could be an episode where he's particularly moody about something, and then he ends up having a speech about that particular thing, and we can see a slower process where she brings him out. Now, I recognize that it plays, while at the same time it recognizes very well the crushing damage that grief does to the guy. At the same time, it does have everything I'm saying about what's charming about Trish Van Devere, literally throwing herself in front of George C. Scott at every moment, really has to do with a kind of a problematic understanding of what women are supposed to do with men, which is to say, we're not supposed to be looking for relationships where women are going to fix us. But, and I think that there is a little bit of, he's a wounded sparrow, she's going to fix him. Having said that, that's what I like about it,
Well, I think there's also, it gives us a fairly realistic relationship because, once you do reach a certain age, how you bond with someone and how you have friends and how you would find a girlfriend, for example, especially if you've been married and had, that person who you thought was your life mate, soulmate, supposedly taken away from you. It's a pretty realistic kind of, hey, we're at least hanging out, if not more. We, a lot of it could take place off camera because it's not as important. It's more important their kind of relationship that we see. It's a real, we have X amount of time, so why don't we? I think it's a fairly accurate representation of relationships at that stage in life, and I think it does that really well. It's a ghost story, but then it's got stuff like that it's fairly realistic. It's really,
they're
there's a lot of good stuff
comfortable together. That they have a lot of chemistry, these two. And when he comes over to her apartment, to say, hey, get on your gear, we're going to go check out this thing, and she charmingly lives with her mom, which I think is, such an interesting detail. But they know one another's apartment. You're right. Now, it helps, by the way, that these two actors are actually married in real life.
Oh, and I love that
Sure.
she and her mom
That's
come
cool.
to the seance.
she brings her mother to the seance. That is the weirdest. That's the kind of detail that is hard to devise. To just simply go, what would be interesting? It would be if she had a mom who kind of serves no purpose at all other than to humanize her, and and we just bring her around. That's awesome. I wanted to talk a little bit about the genre that I think this fits into. And now, let me propose something, because there's no articles on this per se, I don't think. Maybe someday I'll write a book on this. But I think that what we're looking at with this movie and some other movies is something that and this may have been used before, but I would call it prestige horror. And I've used this before, and I think prestige horror is a genre that I would say begins around Exorcist and The Omen in the 70s.
Well, would you include Rosemary's Baby?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Let's so maybe. I think I probably have to, but that means pushing it all the way back to 1969, and maybe that's okay. But let's say Rosemary's Baby.
All the way? Didn't you say 1970?
I think it wraps up. I was thinking, 1973 with The Exorcist, right? But, okay, Rosemary's Baby is a really good, if not the beginning, it's the progenitor. And I think it wraps up around the time of not the Changeling really, but actually the Legacy, a couple of years after this. So by the mid-'80s, it was over. But what all of these had in common was generally money, as Drew was saying earlier, A-list directors, A-list actors, but more than that, a really sumptuous, sometimes almost pornographic love for upper-class living. So you see a lot of, the insides of private schools, and you see limousines and mansions and nice clubs.
Parties.
And all of these, and they're all contemporary. That's another piece of it. It has to be, they're generally non-Gothics, right? And because at the
this definitely veers a lot into Gothic.
It is Gothic, but it's not a period.
It's not a period. It's not like a Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein type movie.
No, you're absolutely right. And if I think in terms of Gothic novels, Gothics were often contemporaries, but generally the typical plot of a Gothic would be that a female leaves her unhappy life, goes to a great house, learns its secrets, falls in love with the brooding guy who's in charge of it, and then winds up basically winning the prize. She wins everything. And you're right that this is a Gothic. It just so happens that the gender roles are essentially switched. That it's George C. Scott and not, it's not Nan Barlow from a Horror Hotel or any of those other characters. Wow, good job, Drew. It never dawned on me that this really is a Gothic horror. It's just literally, it's just switched up in certain ways. But yeah, but it still fits into this genre I'm talking about of prestige, where for a brief moment, horror makers were totally in love with this notion of just showing you first-class horror, and I suppose it really does come about to the end at the same time that Roger Daltrey chokes to death on a chicken bone in The Legacy, and by the way, we've got to do The Legacy, because after
don't you think it was partly killed by the resurgence of teen horror in the 80s with the boom of stuff like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street? Right. I mean, where cheap, fast, makeup effects driven horror geared at teenagers, is something like this. They feel a little podgy.
Yeah,
that would probably, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but they kind of follows the same thing with say punk music at the time, which was kind of reaction to overly produced proggy stuff, So you have these huge Gothic things, and there aren't that many kids who can relate to George C. Scott and a very affluent I mean, we can. It's interesting, but like in general, what are you going to go see as a teenager? You know, hey, am I going to go watch my parents? No. Like, even though this is movies like this are a cool movie, like it is not punk rock like at all. And so the reaction to this becomes, you know, the kind of teen movie thing of like, how do we get more butts in the seat? You know, oh, well, teens want to see teens.
At a lesser amount.
Yeah, and like I said, it kind of tracks with like the, you know, the punk rock movement was in line with that. You know, you don't need a 10-minute song, etc. Like this is, you know, fast and out of control. And I think those movies kind of led to that. I think
right.
I love both, but
think of Return of the Living Dead is 1985, right? And it's got all the punk rockers, and they're playing awesome music, you know, and they've got the hair, and that, you're right. It actually makes me a little bit sad because I know I was enough of a geek that I would have watched this movie if I had been a teenager in 1980. But you're right, and it might even still be the case. I mean, I don't know. If I said to you, first of all, I don't know how you would recast this. I have no idea who would play.
So you said actually George Clooney, and I think that's a good.
Well, no, that's a good point. Yes,
George Clooney would be pretty good in this part.
Yeah. So
not that they should remake it. Don't remake The Changeling, Hollywood.
Please don't. Yeah.
Oh, come on. I seriously, I would enjoy seeing George C. Scott in this role.
You mean George Clooney?
I'm sorry, George Clooney.
If we saw George C. Scott in this role again, it would be a real horror movie.
But I would love to see George Clooney and say Julia Roberts, you know, playing these parts.
Not Julia Roberts.
Oh, come on. I
think that the sort of vibe that this movie has is, you know, the very thing that you just romanticized and talked about would be very, very difficult to recreate in a contemporary film.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, The Conjuring did a very good job of, you know, recreating a 1970s more of a B movie vibe. You know, so maybe you could do. I mean, maybe you could do this. I remain. Look, I'm not anti-remake. I'm not. You know, we about a year ago this time I talked about how much I like the Wolfman remake, and you know, that's a remake that not a lot of people actually like. So I will go to bat for a good remake, but I think they would screw it up if they tried to do this.
I think Isabella Rossellini would be awesome as the female lead. Like she has, you know, enough prestige. I think, like I would see that movie.
So I would love to see it. I would love to see somebody try. But I think Drew's probably right though that somehow there's just in the same sense that you know it's hard to make a 1950s giant insect movie today and try to capture the feel of those movies. You know, it's hard to like.
We don't have the same fears, and we don't have the same.
Right.
There's a lot into a movie, and I think that sometimes people miss that there are some movies that just are of a time, and it is really hard to reproduce that. And calling something that same name in order to cash in on that, it's just hard to do. And I think we've talked about it on this show as well. What I've found in talking to people about horror is a lot of people will remake something, and it seems like a greatest hits, whereas what they're not doing is going back past whatever that movie was into what those people who made that movie were influenced by, because that informed them. And so if you only go back, then it's like a carbon copy. Yeah,
that's really profound.
And so I think that too many people will not go back to the source of the source, which is what made that movie so cool, right? That's what they were reacting off of. And you know, we've kind of talked about that, but I think that's the danger of, hey, we're just going to do this and it's this movie. But you know, back to the thing, I love how it also goes from house to house. Like it involves, you know, this other house where they find the body of the child. Like,
you want to explain where they find the body, like how
it's in her house, right? Like,
Well, yeah, it's in this other woman's house. They get a hint. They get a bunch of hints in the seance. One of them is that there was a well. So George C. Scott looks. He starts detecting out, going, well, okay, so where was a well? Where was a well that these guys owned? And by the way, he figures out pretty quickly what he thinks happened. And most of the movie is just spent with him gathering evidence. I think there's kind of a suspense problem in the movie that they give us really the solution way before he manages.
No, I disagree, because I think that they couldn't waste too much time on it. I like that he's smart. I like that he never he doesn't waste any time, and none of the characters do waste time being, Dana Scully and being like, oh, that's ridiculous. Why would you? They pretty much.
That's a really good point.
All say from the get go. Okay, sure, ghosts, right?
Yeah,
except for the police.
Nobody goes. Right. The police make fun of the fact that it was a seance, but other than that, he immediately. That's what's interesting about this guy. Weird shit goes down in his house, and he immediately just starts. He goes to the real estate person. Goes, anybody ever talk about stuff like this before? There was not a moment where he's like, I do not believe in things like that, and I'm not going to entertain it.
Yeah.
He's completely ready to get involved in it. But they don't play a really cheesy trope that you see in other movies where you find out that he only wants to do it so he can maybe talk to his own child. That also doesn't happen. He is open to the spiritual world because of his losses.
Another wonderful scene is when he's done all this. He's gone out. He's dug up. He's found the body of the boy in the well, the bones. He's found the necklace. He's tried to approach. Well, we can talk about that. But the senator who is. The whole story has to do with. It's kind of actually the resolution is kind of complicated, and I wasn't that keen on it. But anyway, the point is he's done all this stuff. He's kind of come up short, but at least he got the bones and everything. Comes back to the house, and the ghost throws a total temper tantrum and just starts slamming all the doors. Yes. I just love that scene. And he's like, "What do you want from me? You ungrateful little whatever." I remember what he calls him.
He calls him something like, you ungrateful son of a bitch.
Yeah.
From me.
It was so great.
It is. It's great.
Go ahead. When I was thinking though, like the one thing that because he really does try to help the boy and how it plays out, but eventually how it plays out when everything goes terribly awry, I was thinking like, man, I know that the ghost is distraught and it was not cool to be murdered, but you're like, George C. Scott tried to help you. Couldn't you at least let him get his stuff out of the house?
I know, right?
Well, never mind that. The kid straight up murders a cop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, admittedly, it's John Colicos, and I never trust that guy. But I mean, still.
It isn't. I mean, the cop tries to cover up. It's the same cop that's trying to cover up.
Yeah, he's crooked. Right? He's a crooked.
He's crooked. But in general, still, hey, I try to help you, and you burn up all of my crap that I put in your house. Thanks. I assume some of it's in storage because he talks about, oh, this is going to storage, or this is going to Seattle and stuff. But in general,
I have the same thought. Yeah.
In general, you're like, man, you are kind of a jerk, Ghost.
Yes.
He tried to help you, and he confronted a senator on your behalf, who threatened to basically bury him. If you tell anything about this, you're through.
But not just bury him. We will. We'll get you fired. We'll get you thrown into a mental.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's threatened. You will.
You'll
if you threaten me. This is bad. And he's willing to do that. And
it does sort of make sense, though, because the ghost is a child.
No, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, so a little kid throwing a temper tantrum, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's still a jerk, though.
It is, the ghost.
Oh, he's a brat.
But ultimately, the ghost needs to be just simply set free so it can go on about whatever business. Now,
so the question remains: does he get free? Because all this stuff happens. The house burns down. The police guy is murdered. The old man who's took
Well,
over
we
for
should
the
talk
kids.
about what is actually going on here, because that's very important.
Well, Drew, would you like to explain the solution to the mystery?
Well, what essentially occurred is that there was a man that had a little boy who was sickly and crippled. He did not want a crippled heir, so he drowned the little boy.
Which is a horrific scene.
In a terrible, one of the truly terrible, and dumped the body in a well. Then went over to Europe. He adopted a kid that he is going to then pass off as the son. Takes this kid to Europe, presents him when he is a teenager as the miraculously cured son and heir to the throne, so to speak, of this vast fortune. And that's
in all
essentially.
context, this guy needs this kid to live a nice, ripe, long life, because the guy himself has no access to the money except as the controller of the estate for the kid. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I forgot that one little detail. And then the kid, the replacement kid, the quote unquote changeling, has gone on to become a senator and all these other things. And it really did beg the question to me is how much does that guy actually know? I mean, obviously he has to know that he's actually adopted, because he wasn't adopted as a little boy. He was adopted as like an 8-year-old.
So the question is, was it 8 or 6? It was one of those. So
how
he's pretty small. That boy is pretty small. I think
I think the character is 8, because he goes away for 10 years, he comes back, he's 18. So 8 years old, it is conceivable that you could just simply forget all of this stuff about the...
Yeah, I get the impression that the way he was groomed and the way that he was adopted and everything, that the reason he reacts is he doesn't want to remember that, because all his life he's told that they're, that
so you think
he's the son. And I think he's repressing it, and even when he's confronted with it, he's like, that can't be true. That will affect so much of, because he's old too, so nobody wants to confront that.
Well,
this
all happened in like 1918. So how old do you think this guy is?
Melvin Douglas. I mean, so he's in his 80s, I suppose, and Tony's got it right. I think he's like somebody who's been brainwashed. Like a character in one of those movies where somebody gets captured by the North Vietnamese and they're made to think that there's somebody else, and it's all down there. You would just have to break through. 10 years they spent with him in Europe as he grew from 8 to 18, saying, "You are Joseph Carmichael. You are heir to a great fortune. You're going to be a great leader." Yeah,
I mean, you can brainwash somebody in a week. So of course, years and years and years, he's going to be brainwashed.
Yeah. So that's wonderful, because there are things that we could do here. Again, if you imagine this was a long series, and I think my favorite of the movies we. My only problem with that is that he has the woman that's working at the real estate agency that's like keeping up on the house, and she's like going, "Oh well, this guy's digging up on your past." So that's my only problem with that line of thinking, is that he doesn't know. The only possibility that would maintain what we're saying, which is that he doesn't know, or that she is just simply a running dog for him because he is a local favorite son. In other words, it's possible that he gets. Why would he care? Why would he care if somebody was digging up his past if he doesn't know about it?
What I'm saying is, I don't think he doesn't know about it. What I think about it is, if he has to accept that, then he has to accept everything that goes along with that. That's why he fights it. It's not that he doesn't remember it. Why would you set up a guard dog? He's pushed it down so much. Yeah. This is his reaction. Like, he has to confront it all at this really late stage in his life, and also it means he loses the money. Like all of his power. The other reason he reacts this way is all of his power is wrapped up in him being the son. Yeah. And it would mean his dad's a murderer. Which nobody wants to. He doesn't want to confront that either. So there's all. I love the way George C. Scott says it, where he goes, "None of this belongs to you." Yeah.
You know.
Well, also
and he's not
I
even
like
out.
how he's like, I know that you're here to blackmail, and George C. Scott's like, no, I'm not. He's like, he's like in Payback. He's like, I want $70,000, and everybody's like, what? Why? It's 70. Like, no, you want more than that.
Well, he actually does try to buy George C. Scott off. And George C. Scott is like, no.
He's like, no, I don't. That's not why I'm here. And the guy, that makes him even more livid because he realizes like where the power shift actually is. This guy's like, because to him everybody's got a price, of course.
Right.
And so that makes him even more angry.
It's so classy, and it really is a pure. I mean, almost to the level that this could be an episode of, of Masterpiece Theater or something. That it's in the end it is a mystery that George C. Scott is going to solve. He has no interest in making any money. He just has a very demanding client that he needs to help, and he does, and that comes to an end. And as Julia was pointing out, once Melvyn Douglas, the senator, realizes and remembers everything and accepts that he is this guy, that he's the second Joseph Carmichael, then he dies of a heart attack as George C. Scott sees his astral projection, his ghost, as it were, walk into the flames of the house that the ghost has finally set on fire.
That's an awesome, the fire scene. Oh, and the other scene though, where George C. Scott's girlfriend gets chased by the wheelchair.
Yes,
that is so
actually, to be honest with you,
well
Tony,
handled and scary. Like, I don't know, it works for me.
I mean, I guess it's scary. I'm not knocking that, but I could have done without it. I kind of felt like it was, to me, that scene was a bridge too far. I was like, this is strictly exploitative. It's just here to get an extra scare because we're kind of spending.
Honestly, if they had more stuff like that, where I felt I never for once feel like George C. Scott seems like he's in danger. So if they had more stuff like that, I feel like the movie would have been scarier. I understand what you're saying about that being maybe too exploitative, but like you're talking about like the classiness of these movies. No movie is more in your face than The Exorcist.
Yeah.
None.
But I like that George C. Scott's not in danger because the whole point is that the ghost is wanting his help.
No, I agree. I agree with you. I'm just saying, and I like the movie as it is, but I'm saying it's not. That's the reason why I was saying initially that I didn't think it was a scary movie.
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that. So Tony's right. It's very effective. I felt like I was torn because, I thought it was scary, but I also felt like you could probably do without it plot-wise. Plot-wise, you could live.
Certainly is memorable enough that they put the wheelchair on the poster.
Well,
the wheelchair is important because it was his wheelchair when he was sickly, and it's not the other.
No, but you're right. You're right. The ghost is acting out. And
right. And I mean, I don't think I think it's pretty arbitrary for you to say that that's exploitative because that's nothing. It's not that different from anything else. So, I mean, he kills what's-him-a-doodle cop. That's exploitative, I guess. I don't actually know if I would say that.
John Colicos deserves to be done away with in whatever movie he appears in.
Poor guy. But so at the end, he burns down the house, and then. Presumably because the senator has died and the truth has been told and all that, the ghost can rest. But then in the ruins of the mansion, this music box has been important to the plot because it was one of the ways that the ghost communicated to John is that John started writing this music, which is actually in this music box, and he thought he was writing it from his own creative place. Anyway, this music box just suddenly opens up and starts playing. And so my question is, does that mean that he's still there? He's not at rest? And Jason was saying no.
I first of all, do you want my explanation inside or outside the world? Outside the world, this is just a ripoff of Carrie. That's all this is. This is just a nice little thing where they're going to scare you with but in that case it was a dream, and it was just because they wanted another stinger at the end. My feeling in the world, no way this haunting is still going on. The hunting's done. It's done. It's done.
Well, there's no house. I mean, it's a homeless ghost.
House.
Hobo Ghost. He can hang out with Fire Shark.
He'll just wander the hillside here in Seattle. But I really believe that what this is intended to be a sort of a final goodbye from the ghost. Like literally, like at the end of Midsummer Night's Dream, this is the ghost saying, if we spirits have offended, think that this and all is mended. It's
a little epilogue.
It's just a sort of little bow. It's like we've talked about before that, Michael Landon saying, stopping and saying Happy Halloween at the end of his Halloween episodes of, whatever the heaven thing was where he was.
Highway to Heaven.
Highway to Heaven.
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
I think it would have been Hey, He's Not at Rest if it had been the wheelchair and not the music box.
Right.
I think the fact that the music box changes that dialogue, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's no way this haunting is still going on.
Okay.
I mean, I feel satisfied that they took pretty good care of this kid. And, yeah.
Well, then that brings us to the end, so.
Yes, when that is the end. And
I don't think we have anything else to say.
No, you're right. We should actually get final thoughts. And thank you for keeping us sort of on our time. Let's get final thoughts and then come around for endorsements. So I think we started with Julia for once, and so it's good. Julia, Tony, Drew, and then I'll drop something. So, Julia, The Changeling.
Well, so like I've said, there's a couple little things that I would change, but for the most part, and like the main thing I would change is that the house is just too big. But I guess that's why it's a haunted house. Is that if it wasn't, but you can have a haunted house that's smaller, whatever. Anyway, but the little things that I would have changed don't detract from it. I think it's a great picture.
Yeah. No. All right, Drew. What do you? No, wait. I mean, sorry.
You're skipping over Tony.
Tony, final thoughts.
Yeah, I really like it. I like the detective stuff. I think the characters are all like really nicely realized. Yeah, and there's a few it's kind of up or down. It's not a perfect movie, but as far as like a good creepy movie, it does a really great job. It's really excellent. I really enjoy it. I think the sound design again, ups the creep factor for the parts that need to be
Absolutely.
Creepy in the beginning, like that gonging sound of the tub / whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, oh man, it's so effective and so cool. There's lots of great bits, and I think that's part of why I think it would make such a great double feature with The Haunting.
I agree. Yeah.
That would be really, really cool. But yeah, I really enjoy the movie. It's worth checking out and adding to the kind of creepy Halloween October if you're watching a bunch of movies. I think it should be in your list.
Absolutely. No, it should be. Drew, final thoughts for The Changeling.
Again, this is a great palate cleanser after the abysmal shit of Sinister. And I really liked it. Again, to me, this is more of a supernatural mystery than a horror film, but I think it's a very good supernatural mystery. George C. Scott, again, is excellent in this movie. And, this is probably the most different. This is kind of even though it hits a lot of the haunted house genre notes, it's probably the most different of any of the movies that we've watched. Like it's because it does have that detective aspect to it, and also because it deals the way it deals with grieving, and I think because it is both a classic haunted house movie and a haunted house movie that kind of stands out from the rest. Those two things make it a very interesting film, and I'm glad we did this. I think this is a fun movie to talk about.
Thank you. Me too. I know that it's tiresome when we always just love a movie, but I really love the classiness of this film and the moods of it, the sadness of it, the grayness of it. Everything about this film is just it's very magnetic to watch. I have to, I keep coming back to it, and it's absolutely one of my favorites, even though it is enormously sad. So, and in the end, somewhat hopeful by the time it comes around. So I want to do endorsements. I want to find out what is that thing that you guys have been enjoying over the past week and thinking about that you want to share with our listeners. So let's go the same direction, Joya, Tony, Drew, and I'll go. Joya, anything to endorse this time around?
Well, we watched a delightful family film called Book of Life, if you haven't heard of it. It's an animated movie about Dia de los Muertos, and it's so much fun. It's a really cute film, and I recommend it even if you're not a kid. we adults enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely. No, I liked it too. Tony, endorsements?
Yeah, I have to say I've enjoyed the director's cut of Nightbreed, which I should, if you don't have it, Drew, we should check it out.
Yes.
More restoration, like even above what they did when I saw the Cabal cut last year that I had talked about. Yeah, it's really good. And then also the big one is Drew and I, probably me more so, are going to be at Housecore Horror Fest looking at movies so that we can review for this podcast, for the website. And, we're going to try to get some interviews here and there where we can. Mainly, I think film will be our main focus, but, if any of the bands, if we're able to catch a band that we can interview, we're going to do that too. So thanks to Housecore for having us. That's a big, awesome thing to get to report on this and really, push that. That's going to be really, really awesome.
I hope you do some interviews. I think that'd be fantastic, and we can put them up both ways. If you do like some interviews with people, and I think I'll be doing some of these as well. We'll do them as special episodes of the podcast that'll just go up between the episodes, so people might have something to tide them over. And also, we can put them on the YouTube channel. So that's a great idea. If the listener thinks that this is a particularly good idea, let us know, because we think it's something that'll connect with the listener, but it's it still remains to be seen.
Yeah, and we and also if there's anybody in Austin who digs the show, we'll be around. So hit us up on Facebook. Like I'll be checking with my phone. Like if there's somebody, hey, I'm also a fan. We're willing to meet and hang out. That's one thing we did. I think we put up that interview with Final Drive, and I'd like to do more stuff like that where we're talking to fans and we want to know what you dig about horror and fill us in on stuff. We have a fairly informal show in general, and I like kind of keeping it like that. And so, we're definitely accessible, and, we're fans as well. So, if you are at Housecore and you do listen to this, hit us up on the Facebook page and let us know what you're seeing as well, and maybe we can hang out, talk movies and music and everything else. I'm pretty psyched because there's a lot of great bands as well. It's going to be really cool.
Very cool. Mr. Drew, anything to endorse?
Well, they just did a mega dump of several seasons of The Walking Dead on Netflix, and it's been actually years since I've watched that show, so I've had a good old time playing catch up with it. And honestly, I feel like I guess it's season 3 and season 4 that are up there. I feel like actually the show has greatly improved. They introduced the character of the governor, which is a character from the comic, and he's played by David Morrissey. And he doesn't look at all like the character from the comics, which I know some people are like, oh, where's his handlebar mustache and mullet? But I think David Morrissey does an excellent job bringing some humanity to the character, and I was very impressed with that. I also I'm doing an advanced plug, but the last, from the 27th through the 31st, Monsterverse is going to be having a Comixology sale. It's going to be a coupon code sale, which I will post once on the Facebook group once I have that. But not only is all of the Halloween Man stuff going to be severely marked down, but all of the Monsterverse stuff. That's all of Flesh and Blood, all of Bela Lugosi's Tales from the Grave, all of Scarlet, the Weird West, all of those titles are going to be marked down. You can go and check out all of the Monsterverse books. And I hate to sound like too much of a cheerleader for the company I work for, but Monsterverse has some excellent titles if you're a genre fan. I mean, these are books I would be reading if I was not a part of the company.
Are the back issue stuff like the Bela Lugosi presents books about?
Yes.
Fantastic. No, those are wonderful.
So please get on there. Check out Halloween Man. Check out. I love Flesh and Blood. Flesh and Blood is an amazing series, and they have the first 2 issues up there. The issues are ginormous, but you should check out all of the MonsterVerse titles.
Flesh and Blood is really great. That's pretty amazing because that's a series that posits a universe basically where everything in the horror, in the Hammer horror universe, sort of is happening more or less simultaneously. So that it's very, very cool. So you have several characters who represent people that Peter Cushing played in the movies. It's neat. It's a very cool series. Well, cool.
Well, and I think something that Penny Dreadful fans would probably get a lot of enjoyment out of for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Better than Penny Dreadful.
I got to give one more for those of you who are not going to be at Housecore 24/7. I got to give one more shout out. My wife is doing a weekly karaoke thing at Spinners Live on Sunday, 7 to 11. That's Rockabilly Rockout Karaoke. I went last week. I had an amazing time. I also learned that I am equally good singing Hank Williams as I am doing Frankenfurter, which is mind-blowing to me. So if you're in the Austin area and you want to, something free and fun on Sunday night, you should come out and hang out with my wife because I'm sure this week will be equally entertaining.
Oh, that does remind me. I do want to give another shout out, and I know I've been hitting this up, but the director, Phil Mucci, is going to have his retrospective at Housecore, and I think it's before the karaoke thing you're talking about. So it's even possible to do both. But
and what are the dates on Housecore again, though?
What?
When does it go on, Housecore?
Housecore is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. But Sunday night, video director and online friend, I'm hoping to hang out with him. One of my favorite video directors at this point, Phil Mucci, is doing a retrospective. I think I posted a couple times on our site and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I'm really excited. That's other than some of the bands and like some of the cool horror movies and like
what time does Danzig play? Like that's
that night. It'll be late.
Is he Friday or is he Sunday?
It's Sunday, I believe. I'll have to double check.
Sunday.
So there's a lot going on, but I'm definitely getting to meet Phil in person because we talked a lot online. He's definitely one of the people. If I had money to just throw at somebody to make a video for Deserts of Mars, he would be the first person I would go to, hands down. And he's done shorts and he's done videos, and so he's going to have a whole Q&A and everything with he has the star of some of his videos, and he's done stuff for High on Fire, for his most recent one with Monster Magnet. He did Huntress. He did several others. Pig Destroyer, I think, was another band he's done stuff for, and lots of great.
What's the venue?
Really cool stuff. It's Emo's East is where the stuff.
So all this
now the only emos.
Yeah. Well, it's always been termed. I guess it's always been.
It's Emo's East to me. Like I don't know that I'll ever think of it as emos, but it's.
But it's all there and on the Housecore Horror Festival.com, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll post
They have the entire original cast of living, I should say, but living cast of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre there.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff that, we want to cover, and I'm always, if I'm going to be a press for a place, I'm there to cover it. Again, since Fantastic Fest,
I hope you get some interviews. I think it'll be good to put up some great things. Yeah. I'm
hoping to do that.
You can just get people and get people to just say things about their favorite kind of horror movie. We can get it.
That's the plan right now. So, but we hope to see people there. But there's lots of great stuff, and I'm really. But like I said, the reason I'm plugging Phil is just because I really believe in his mashup of, kind of horror and sci-fi tropes along with, heavy music. And his style is something that I think a lot of people need to see. And so I know I've been posting a lot about it, but I'm really psyched that they gave, a video director and a fairly new video director. And, when you think about, the cast of Texas Chainsaw Massacre is going to be there. Like, there's a really good mix of new and old. And so I'm super psyched for his retrospective. And so also, if you're going, please go to his thing, to his panel, because it's, and I really believe in it. So we like to support cool people who, he's been awesome, and I'm pretty stoked about that. So.
Outstanding. Okay, my endorsements are a little more, I don't know, not generic's not the word. National might be a perfectly valid word, so that no matter where you are, you can check out the things that I've been checking out. So two things that I want to mention. For one thing, I've been listening to a new podcast called Serial, which I find to be super addictive. I think I just listened to the 5th episode. It's been running, I guess, for 5 weeks. It is a spin-off of This American Life, but it is Sarah Koenig, producer, investigating one murder that happened 15 years ago, and she's investigating the witnesses. She's trying to work out whether the guy who's in prison is the one who really did it. Sometimes she leans more towards, yes, he did it, and sometimes she leans more towards, no, maybe it's impossible that he did. Ultimately, it's about, in 1999, during one 20-minute period, somebody strangled a 16-year-old girl and then buried her in the woods. And is it the guy who is sitting in prison or not? And it's really, really cool to listen to her sort of spend an hour talking about the alibi and spend an hour talking about the timeline. It's great. It's this wonderful experiment in seeing if you can do an entire series about one topic and really dig deep into it. So I've been impressed by that. The other one, so this weekend I'm going to be giving a talk on the history of Halloween and the meaning of horror at the Columbine Unitarian Universalist Church in Littleton, Colorado. And before that, I'm going to be reading a children's book. And so I've been rediscovering the monster at the end of this book. This is a book that you must read. The monster at the end of this book is amazing because it is suspenseful, because there is a monster at the end of this book. So I recommend this. It is actually delightful. And you're looking
it
at it
stars Grover, lovable furry.
Absolutely.
Grover.
And I remember doing the voices. I remember all that stuff that we used to do when the girls were tiny. And I'm going to have to actually read this book aloud to an entire, to a bunch of children, sitting in a circle
and adults.
To a gathered, into a gathered congregation. And so I've been trying to decide whether to do all the voices like I would do when the girls were little.
Mm-hmm.
I think I don't have.
Why not?
Yeah, sure.
I think you're obligated at this point.
It would also be kind of fun to do John Malkovich style asides, where I could stop and go, here he's making a very strong, solid brick wall, and then I could go, it's interesting how many monsters we've seen over time who were actually walled up alive, which used to be something.
No, do not do that.
In fact, was walled away alive in 1411.
No, I vote no.
That's just now thinking about. Let me stop the book here for a second to note.
No.
Yes, no, but the monster at the end of this book, always a classic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Come to our Facebook page and let us know what you want to talk about, what you think, how you disagree with the last thing we talked about, what you want to see coming up. Please.
And how much you love it when I hate things.
Yeah, for sure. And please leave us reviews. We totally need reviews, and the best place to leave reviews is on iTunes because everybody else picks up the reviews from iTunes and scatters them around, so it helps people find the show. Tell your friends. Bring your friends along, sneak into their rooms and just start playing the podcast and sneak back out, and they'll feel like they must listen.
Or they'll be totally creeped out at why this ghost has suddenly decided to start playing haunted house podcasts.
Yes. So if we get, and we're getting close to another milestone in listeners on the Facebook page. I think if we pass the next milestone, perhaps we will make one of those 4-person jib jab videos with all of our faces. So
I think we should just do that for Halloween anyway.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and we will see you next week. Bye, guys.
Night.
Bye.